How's it going, you guys? Today I'm rebuilding a B-series transmission, or at least I was attempting to. I also got a new camera too. I don't know how well it's going to work. Only has a wide angle and a fisheye option, so let's go ahead and get to this. Now, I already took this apart trying to speed up the video and found it was just absolute trash. So I'm just going to get to it, take off the cover. I couldn't even put the cover back on because it's so badly damaged, but basically the story of this is a buddy of mine dropped this off to me. He bought it off of a friend of his, and I guess it was out in his backyard for like a year, maybe 2 years, just sitting on its side. That's why it's all dusty. And he asked me if I would take a look at it. Let him know if it's good to go. If it's good to go, then go ahead and rebuild it or do whatever needs done on it. If not, let him know. So I'm going to show you guys what I found, and this is what I usually find, not usually, but sometimes find on these transmissions that you find in a buddy's backyard. So let's get to it. So basically, if you want to know the way that the B-series transmission comes down or comes apart, is almost like the D-series. This D-series and the B-series have a lot in common. I mean, B-series is like the big brother to the D-series. D-series is kind of like B-series light, I guess you would say. There's a lot of upgrades on the B-series that were done that the D-series didn't get. So I'll try and point those out. So basically, if you watch the D-series video that I did, then it's basically the same thing, only you don't have an inner shaft guide bolt that goes on the inside of the clutch housing that you have to remove first and then put in last. And it's almost like rebuilding a 96 to 2000 transmission, because it has steel shift forks and it's got the small check balls that you have to remove in order to get the case off. And that's what those are the D10 balls that help the gear, or whenever you shift, it stays in that gear. So remove the perimeter bolts, pop off your top plug, remove the snap ring, or hold open the snap ring. You do have one extra bolt that you've got to remove. See if I can find it real quick. It's one of those. So you do have one extra bolt, and it goes right here. And that is for your reverse. And that has to be removed before you can remove the tranny. So you got this bolt here, all your perimeter bolts, your two detent springs and check balls and bolts, this and the snap ring, and then you pry it off just like a D-series. No interlock guide bolt, you don't have to mess with it. It's a completely different design. So off comes the cover after you take all that stuff off and fight with the snap ring. And here's the inside of the case. Good stuff. Now, to show you what I found on this tranny. So while I'm pulling this apart, I'll just tell you kind of a little story about what happened to a friend of mine. Kind of the same deal. He bought a transmission off Craigslist from an unknown guy. Guy said it was great, ran good, no issues, no pop-outs, no grinds, all that BS. And got it home, put it in his car, and it had first gear, ran fine. No gears after that, except for fifth and reverse. You just put it in gear and the engine would spin up, and then that was it. Wouldn't move, car wouldn't move, didn't sound loud, just wouldn't move. So he brought it over to me. After taking it out of his car, I took the cover off, and I found that second, third, and fourth, the teeth were taken completely off the gears. They're just stripped clean. On both the counter and the main shaft, just obliterated. The input shaft bearing was just shot. The diff, the spider gears on the inside of it were just obliterated. And you know, I asked him how much he paid for it. He was like, oh, $300 for it. Was a GSR transmission, and it must have been a boosted Honda, probably upwards of 400 horsepower. Just absolutely annihilated that transmission. And that guy put it on Craigslist as a good tranny. He bought it, put it in his car, wasted all that time, and come to find out it was just done. Garbage. So he ended up putting it back on Craigslist as a parts tranny, and got like, I think, $50 off of it. Just, that sucks so bad. But that's what kind of what you deal with sometimes on this. But anyways, let me finish up taking this apart. Got your 210s right here. Kind of like on the D-Series, shoulder bolts. Looks familiar, D-Series, same thing. Put that aside. Then you have your reverse and idler gear. That actually, it can come out. It only came out on me, like that, because this input shaft bearing is shot, and I'll show you that. Usually you have to take the gear stacks off in order to get that idler gear off. Let's see if you guys can see everything. Yeah, you can see everything all right. And I'll get close up, don't worry. So then on the B series, you have a different shift assembly. Instead of having the 112 millimeter that you had to go down and fish out, this one you just take off 3 10 millimeter bolts, or in this case only 2 because one of them fell out on it. Found it floating around inside of it. Now, 2 of them are shoulder bolts, and one of them, this one back here, is not a shoulder bolt. Usually it's gold. So then you just rotate it. Pull up the shaft a little bit so you can have the clearance. And there you go, it's out. All one assembly. And if this comes out or falls out, I'll show you how to put that back together. So set that aside. And actually, I just want to show you the state of this transmission the way that I found it. Just absolutely garbage. And apparently this thing was sitting on its side and it had gotten water inside of it. Just look at that. All that grime and rust. Ugly. So I could have dealt with the rust that was inside of there, and I'll show you how much extra rust there is. Also inside of the case, you can see all that rust. It obviously had water in it for quite a while. Now I could have dealt with the rust. He was basically looking for a quote, how much it would cost to rebuild it, and I thought, oh, okay, rust. The shift assembly would need replaced, if not completely cleaned, and hopefully it was still usable after that. So I kept going. So I took off my shift shafts. Just like a D-Series, pop them out, lay them aside. Just like it, only these shafts or these shift forks are much stronger. Don't see a whole lot of these break. You do see the steel ones bend occasionally, but much stronger. And then it comes to the bottom of the case. So the ISB, or the input shaft bearing, was obviously just garbage. It was gone. The balls were falling out. And same as the G-Series, you got the shims that go on the end of the shaft. So it was missing a couple of the balls on the input shaft. And then I pulled the diff out, and I realized that, hey, we've got some serious damage going on this. I don't know if you can see that. There are teeth that are just garbage inside of there. Same thing right there, there's a good one. Tooth missing off the bottom right there. And then it's got a decent amount of rust, of course. So I dug a little further, found a washer, who knows where that came from, and I found case damage from where a bolt had fallen out. And that would be right here. Right here in this area. Just tore up. Probably would have been salvageable. And after looking at all that, I just told the customer that no way. you know, you'd probably be better off just buying another tranny, because the amount of time it would take for me to clean all the parts, find new parts to replace the broken ones, a new diff, yeah, probably not worth it. I'm not saying it's not rebuildable, but the amount of time invested in it would be worth less than going and getting another tranny, because you can pick one up for $200, $300, and he's already going to be, you know, $80 into it just for an hour for me to look at it. So, yeah, that's basically it. So this is where it ends, and I'll put it back together again as far as I can, where I started this video at, because this is gone, meaning that the top input shaft won't go on, not without a lot of fidgeting. So I'm just going to hand it back to him and say, here you go, dude, I'm just charging you an hour. And now to highlight some of the differences, the key differences between the D series and the B series. So I'm not going to do a full teardown on this, because once I get a rebuild, then I will, or a transmission that is rebuildable. You got your counter shaft, shift forks. There's a couple of key differences. So your sliders, same thing, you got the same deal going on. It's a little bit different right here because you have this extra shim that goes in here, but that's not removable, so don't worry about it. Exactly the same from here down on the shaft as a D series, that is. Same tear down, same rebuild. The only difference is right here. So if you notice on fifth gear, this is fifth gear on the main shaft, you got fifth, down, and then going up, you got another gear. Well, what's up with that? Why would you have another gear? It's not a 6-speed. No, this is actually tied to reverse. So not all B series have this, but quite a few do. Sorry for the shaky cam, doing it by hand. But whenever you engage this into reverse, which is this little prong right here, it also pushes up on this synchro. And it's called a shaft brake. So it pushes up on this synchro, and that's why this is lugged to the case, so that it'll slow down the input shaft whenever you shift in reverse. Now you'll notice that on D series they don't have a shaft brake or a reverse brake, and that's why sometimes whenever you'll go to put it into gear in reverse, you'll hear a slight grinding sound and then it'll clunk right into gear. This alleviates that problem by slowing down the input shaft before it goes into gear, and that's a really neat feature. It works really well. Just one of the few things. Now whenever you get into B16 transmissions and Type R transmissions, it's a little bit different. They have 3-piece synchros and stuff like that, but I'll cover that whenever one comes in. Countershaft, same deal as D series, almost exactly the same. Different gear ratios. In B series you can get a lot of different ratios. In fact, if you were looking for better ratios on a transmission, the worst B series, which would be an LS B series, is as far as gear spacing and how short the gearing is on an LS. The worst B series is comparable or better than the best of D series offers, which would be like a 4.25 differential and a Z6 or a Y8. You could do the dual overhead cam ZC swap, but it's still, the gear spacing is a little wide. But yeah, just to give you an idea, the gearing in B series is much better than the D series. But that's not to say that the transmissions are garbage. But if you really want that low, you know, first, second, fourth, to do either auto-Xing or really tight spacing like a B16 or a Type R transmission, you're not going to find it in a D series, not without shelling out money for the custom gears. Coming to the inside of the case, now we're looking at this, and you see this retainer. Now if you watch my D series video, you saw that I staked all around here on the D series video, but on this they added a retainer, so you don't have to do that. It's nice. And then pretty much everything else is just, you know, about the same. The shift mechanism on the B series is much more simplified, much simpler. All you have is a straight shaft that comes in right here, goes straight in, and then comes up to right here. And the way that that shift mechanism works is really cool. So let me try and tear that down and show that to you real quick. See if I can get this thing mounted. Okay. So on the shift mechanism, if you accidentally pull it apart, you know, and the thing falls apart, you're like, oh no, what is all this? It's pretty simple. You've got one notch right here, and what this notch here is for, let me show it to you, this one right here, this pin, I guess you would say, actually this is the notch that it goes into, that hook looking thing. This pin right here is for the side to side movement. So whenever you get in the car and you go left or right from neutral, that's what this pin is here for, and it's actually selecting a register. And I call it a register or a gate for which shift fork it goes up. And then on this, as you can tell, you've got these two prongs right here which line up the other two gates and keeps them in neutral while it selects whichever one that you want to go up or down. So if you were to keep it directly in the center of reverse and fifth, and then this would be third and fourth if you were in neutral, and then you would have first and second on this one. So it would, if you just went straight up, from neutral straight up, this selector right here would go up, and you have third. If you were to pull down, this would go down, you have fourth. Now if you wanted first, this right here would go this way, and then you would go up and you have first. And then the same thing for reverse and fifth, same idea. So that's what this is here for, is it moves it from left to right. That's what that pin's for. So, and then also this right here, this slot right here is where this goes into, this hook looking deal. That goes in here, and that's for the up and down. That is the actual up and down. So to put it back in, you line your pin up at the bottom of it until it goes all the way through. And then you line up your slot with it right here, push it down flat, line it up with the slot, and get them both in there at the same time. You don't have to line up the pin, the actual big pin, with the bottom hole yet. You just want to make sure that that is flat and you have this hook in this slot and the pin in this slot up top. Then you push it together, push the pin all the way down, and there you go. It's all together. So now you should be able to move this up and see this hook looking deal move up and down. When you move left to right, it should be able to move. Now this one's pretty stiff, but I probably won't be able to move it. I don't think it ever worked. So let me put this back in. That's actually basically it for this review.